Hey everyone, we will still be on the Stampede Podcast Network, but this is an announcement to say that we will have a standalone YouTube channel, UnCoupling, so head over to that channel for all past and future episodes, and don't forget to subscribe.
When we start to fill in our self-concept with the other person's attributes, this is when it can get really, really sticky and also extremely painful when we lose the relationship. And that's why it's so important to continue or start to and continue to what I call date yourself.
Hey everybody, this is Holland Roden, and this is another episode of UnCoupling, where we talk about breakups and, more importantly, moving through them with self-empowerment. Today on the podcast, we have an amazing dating coach that I'm excited to dive in with, Megan Weks. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Holland. Thanks for having me.
Of course, she is a certified dating and relationship coach, author, and speaker featured in Ford's Women, Forbes, and Yahoo Finance. She is named a top dating advisor by the New York Times and was Maxim's top dating coach of 2023. And she has developed her very own signature dating method called the Manfunnel method. I'm excited to jump in. Now, we always like to say on the program, we like to destigmatize breakups. They're not failures. They're just pivoting to a new direction in your life. And there's so much you can learn from breakups. What is your stance on that? And are you currently in your own relationship?
Oh, Holland, I love that you're doing this and bringing light to that, because there is shame when we lose a relationship and people grasp on to relationships just to say they have one or to feel whole, right? Where in actuality, through our relationships and essentially our breakups is how we gain most of our personal growth in our lives. So I love that. And yes, I've been married over 9 years, going on my 10th year to my husband, Josh.
Oh, and a little tidbit that we interviewed you before, but what was your dating relationship, your dating history like before you met your husband?
Well, actually, Josh is my longest relationship ever. I hadn't even had a relationship, a long-term relationship that was over a year before I married my husband, Josh. So I was living in Manhattan, pounding these pavements, looking for love. And it was really confusing because I felt like I was the full package. And I had a great career and friends and family and all of those things. And there was one missing piece that just seemed to not fit or work out, and that was romantically for me. So I probably had about 75 broken hearts in my life, Holland, before I made some changes, started to look within, and these changes and seeking love really sparked my personal development journey. And when I came across these magical things and learned that there was so much that you can do and so much that you can learn to strengthen relationships, I was hooked and completely changed my career to help others do the same.
So it was your dating history and then finding your partner that said, oh, wow, I made these changes. I want to teach other women to do the same.
Yes, it was when I started really gaining traction. Even before I had found Josh, I sort of became obsessed with learning and the personal development related to finding love, because I was doing it all wrong. So I was shocked. It was almost like everything in my life that I was conditioned to be as a modern woman was holding me back in the relationships with the kind of men I wanted. And I had no idea. And so it was a huge aha. And when I discovered these new things, it's like I couldn't stop. I was in a corporate job and I would sit in like cubicles with my girlfriends and just share this. And I loved it so much. And I'm just so passionate about it that I had to figure out how to make it a career. And that was 2015. So I've been practicing this and helping women for quite some time now.
And what would you say your coaching methods are different from other dating coaches? What made people want to come to the Manfunnel method?
The Manfunnel is a holistic approach, Holland. So we shift the person from the inside out and the outside in. But But what I love to show women is, like, many coaches are going to say, you really need to build your self-love before you can find love, or do all this inner work. And mind you, there is inner work in my method. However, I feel that the practical parts of learning how to show up as a woman who has done that inner work, as the woman who has that solid self-concept, and understands her value inside. If you start learning those behaviors and then just practicing them out in the world, you start to internalize and learn what it looks like and what it feels like to show up with that high level of confidence. And you start having like a lot better results out there. So I absolutely love to give women quick wins, show them how to have better success, be that in person dating, like finding people out on the streets or in that Starbucks, or online and dating apps, which I happen to love.
Well, I think it's interesting what you said, that, meeting someone in a Starbucks or a grocery store, that people tend to, I say people, myself included, when I was single, I almost closed my eyes to the everyday errands and the in real life activities because dating apps are there. So we're almost, I found myself compartmentalizing my own life, where I was subconsciously quite asleep, or I would run out in my sweatpants and it looked like I had rolled out of bed because I had to go run my daily errands, or even go to dinner with friends. I had separated in my life where my headspace was to meet someone, or where it's just to get, the daily errands or the daily grind.
That makes so much sense. That is such a common thing right now. I think younger people too are just having such a hard time. So much of their life is virtual that the real world, they don't know how to put themselves out there. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. What would be the first thing you would tell someone going through an uncoupling as a dating coach? Where do you start?
Well, the first thing is that I really want them to understand that this person is a stepping stone in their lives, and there's usually something greater around the corner. And I really I don't want you to do something that I call swimming upstream in your life. I want you to ride the wave of the way the tide is like guiding you in your life. Okay. That person is letting you go, or it's not working out for a reason. Yes, of course, sometimes people come back to each other after a period of reflection and space. That's absolutely true. Right. And if you want that to happen, there are ways to grow and reflect and then come back to that love. But the first thing that I want them to know is not to fight that, not to fight what life and the universe is trying to show you or guide you toward. It's extremely painful when someone does that, when they're like constantly grasping on to the past in that relationship. I find that when we do that, it's just the most painful route when you're going through a breakup. What do you think?
I think going through uncoupling, it depends on obviously the duration. So the weight and the gravity of that relationship. I also think age on both genders, but I do think that women tend to, I can speak for myself in that this idea around children. And if people do want to have kids, it logistically externalizes the path to love. It's not such an internal feeling. It's more of logistics are driving your decisions that don't necessarily have an emotional pull. It's such a logistical external pull.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right.
The second that women have the opportunity to say nothing externally will convince me or rush me, then we have the space to fully feel what we're feeling, and in the time that we're supposed to feel, not that it's rushed. Like, would you say that women tend to, or do men, like, do you find that, I'm assuming you coach both men and women?
Mostly women, but
Mostly
yes,
women.
I speak to men about a lot of things, and I help them sometimes. So women in your case mostly is just finding that time frame of when is it appropriate to move to next levels, and if you tend to be an oversharer
versus somebody who likes to shut down. It's just different types of people are on these different timelines, and making sure that dating timeline feels organic for the right reasons, that you're not rushing it or convincing yourself you like somebody more than you do because of an external force or a pressure. That's what I would say the biggest thing with me and my girlfriends is going on in our 30s. That's what's on the table.
Yeah, it is challenging because there is a real external timeline biologically as a woman that we are truly up against. And yeah, you don't want to force it. So there's that fine line of like knowing when to stop shopping around, like you have a good man who's going to show up for you in your life. And it can be really tricky, but the truth is that if you do want to have biological children, there is a little bit of pressure there.
What do you say to women that come to you? And I guess I would ask you first, is there stigmas around dating coaches? How do people find dating coaches? If they're going through a breakup and they say, I don't want to do this, I should, or they're gung-ho about it, where can they find dating coaches, and what makes people differentiate dating coaches from a therapist and going through their breakup with their therapist?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's so much less of a stigma in using a dating coach nowadays. And when someone reaches out for help, which is really not easy to do, I think that they feel really supported. They don't have to go through dating alone. The difference between a therapist and someone trained specifically in dating like myself is just that. Like I understand dating and all of the dynamics very, very well. Whereas a therapist, and I like to work with clients who are in therapy, a lot comes up during this process, and they can unpack deeper things and talk about their traumas and their families and clear that away with their therapist and other modalities too that are really great to pair if you're not getting the results that you want in love. But for me, and I'm glad you brought it up, my favorite thing is to work with a woman who is under that pressure. My goal is to help her, even though she's feeling like she might be up against a wall or running out of time. What I do is I help her still date from a heart-led place and find serenity. So it's almost like taking a step back to take a step forward. We start digging the foundation. The metaphor is she's a home, or that relationship is that beautiful home. Okay. And we really dig that foundation, lay the cement, and start to build, we dig the pit for the foundation, and we start to build a really sturdy foundation. And what we find, which is really magical, is that when we do lay all that cement and she feels that serenity and can soften into it and feel really confident about her abilities to find love, the things that she wants just start to attract more, rather than when you're in that energy of push, kind of chase and try hard. Okay. So you can feel the difference just in the explanation of that. So even though we're slowing everything down, essentially it speeds things up so much faster.
And what would be an example if I'm like your model client that comes in and says, you're saying you need to slow things down, take a big picture look. What's the homework you would give me for week one going through a breakup? Well,
I would love to share that when I was in coaching school back in 2015, I was a very green coach and I was very nervous. We had to coach each other on phone calls in front of our whole class, and it was, uncomfortable. Okay. And there was 3 women in my class, not in my class, excuse me. There's 3 women in my life that I had met. I didn't know them very well, but I knew I needed to practice because I wanted to sound good on my calls and ultimately be a good coach. So these women that had come into my life, one hadn't had a relationship, a boyfriend in a decade. Okay. And she was like getting toward the end of her 30s. Okay. One of them was a little deeper into her 40s, and the other one was, again, late 30s, feeling the pressure. These women, 2 of them were living in Manhattan, the other one in New York. And I was like, can I practice on you? And they said yes. Okay. So fast forward, and I'll tell you a little bit about the tips in between. But fast forward, these women who hadn't gotten past like a 3rd date in a handful of years, And the other one, just the older one, never married and just really struggled. All 3 out of 3 were in a serious relationship within 3 months, and all 3 out of 3 moved on to be married after that. After I saw how magical this was, I knew it had already worked for me, but after I saw how the process worked, that's when I was all in and really went all in and made this my career. So what I do
That's
with
incredible.
women, it's really
That's incredible.
wild.
Yeah.
I even have a woman, let me just finish this story. I have another woman who just announced her engagement. She just turned 50. She had never had a boyfriend in her life before she came to my work.
So dating coaches, I didn't even know there was dating school. I thought this was something intuitive that people said, oh, I'm going to formulate almost from a psychological standpoint. So that's so interesting to know that there is dating coach school out there and that there was a path for you to follow and clue into, and you already had that intuition of, I was the person that, your friends came to during a breakup, or you really, found yourself connected to it. That's incredible.
Yeah, no, so I'm trained really, and there's a lot of coaching schools for it now because it's such a popular career now.
That's amazing to know.
One of the processes that you'll go through with any dating coach is something that's very difficult to do on your own because we all sit in our own blind spots. So one of the first thing that any coach is going to do is just communicate with you. So I might ask you, so Holland, why is it that you're not in the relationship that you want to be in at this time? Like if a woman calls and she's looking for love, I'll ask that question and we'll just get to talking and I'll just jot down the things that come up that I can hear and feel are her beliefs that are very limiting. So it's your basic limiting beliefs, and it's just so simple that you create your own glass ceiling with. So that's really the first thing that you need to determine. And most of your friends that are close, if you've had similar friends for a while, you're running in a friend group. The issue with that and getting help from friends is that you're going to find that your friends have the same kind of level of trauma and glass ceiling that you do. And that's one of the reasons you click with them so much. And so it's difficult to pull yourself out of these blind spots.
So you have to reach out to a professional source, right?
Well, it would be helpful.
And then Manfunnel method, will you describe what makes your coaching so particular and what is the Manfunnel method?
The biggest thing that the Manfunnel method helps you do is prevent something that I call overcommitment. And this happens with the dating of today. People are dating in a linear fashion. So they're getting really excited about someone that they found on Bumble or Raya or whatnot. And then when we feel excitement, that's when we sort of like forget about the top of the funnel and we go all in. And as a woman, biologically, there's just something about us. I don't know about you, but we start like visualizing our life with that person. And it's almost like we're creating, like our persona starts to suck in the other person and envisioning like how the life could be together. And we start doing that relatively early because look, it's just natural to see like, what's the point of me dating this person? Does he fit into my life? But with the Manfunnel, what I want you to do, the biggest differentiator is I really want you to hold back and observe people who you're considering and truly take your time and get to know them from a values standpoint before you're really allowing your biology to creep up on you and getting really attached and getting your expectations heightened. Because when our expectations go beyond where the relationship is, this essentially is very problematic for the polarity in the relationship. It's a fine line in the beginning. And this is where people say, like, I just want to be myself. I don't want any strategy when it comes to love. And I understand that. My work actually takes you back to a deeper authenticity of self. But there are considerations that in the Manfunnel, what I said in the beginning, how you get a lot of quick wins. My clients are getting these quick wins because they are following guidelines that keep them from tripping up from their old patterns. And one of those patterns is jumping in and getting attached very early. And let me just throw it back to you, when you feel really attached to someone so soon, how does that affect how you show up and your vibe in that early young relationship?
I think in my past, being too curious can be a fault in your life as an individual, because when you find yourself drawn to someone, it's almost too intrinsic that you find yourself gravitating towards what they're interested in. And you don't want to lose your sense of self. But when you think, oh, they're adventurous, I'm adventurous, they like these other three new hobbies, and all of a sudden I have three new hobbies in my life, that's pause for concern when I can very easily mistake it for my own curiosity, because I naturally will find myself curious about those sports. So it's hard to decipher what I have found that on my own, or is it because they're just simply here in my life?
Yes, I love
and
that.
Am I using
I love
that
that you're bringing
as a
that
tool?
up. Yeah.
Yeah, as if I'm using it as a tool to like them more, find more common ground with them, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but is there a time frame where that's just too soon? Even if you have an interest in their hobbies, don't tell them that you do. Go do it on your own. Make it a point that it's not something that bonds the two of you. Is something I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I've touched on that a bit. So I want to pull back something I'd said before about painful breakups. So I'm so loving that you said that, because as I said, as a woman, we biologically start hanging our hopes on this, like, we hang our hat on this coat rack of relationship. And it's very hard once we get attached to continue to explore and feel into who's really best for us. But what you're saying is, you don't, like, sometimes you can't tell if you have actual curiosity for this hobby, or if maybe this new person is influencing you so much, and you're seeing this shift in your actual persona. Okay. This is what I was getting on before. Like, when we start to fill in our self concept with the other person's attributes, this is when it can get really, really sticky, and also extremely painful when we lose the relationship. And that's why it's so important to continue, or start to and continue to, what I call date yourself, which is actually the very beginning part of when we're laying that foundation on the home and digging that hole and adding the cement. It's truly getting to know yourself in a deeper way. And through my work, I'm offering a systematic process of exactly how to do that. Why? For the very reason. So you have a stronger sense of who you are. You're able to communicate that to others, but you also know where you begin and he ends. And when you know all these things about yourself on a deeper level, which we all know, but if we haven't taken the time to sit and truly explore, reflect, write it all down, it just slips our mind. So when we have this complete thing that, like, we've really studied ourselves and we're on the date, we know what to talk about, it makes us have a much better sense of our own value, and we show up that way, not only on dates, but within the relationship too.
So if someone comes to you fresh out of a breakup or an uncoupling, what do you suggest to them as a coach? Do you work on just self-evolvement? Like you're saying, there's the process of self-awareness. Is there a particular refractory period? Do you think people, obviously that's going to depend on the person and the length of their previous relationship, but is there something that you find yourself suggesting on a regular basis to people that have just gotten out of breakup and immediately now they're at your front door and they're very willing participants?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of the people who've come to me are not that fresh out of a breakup, but here's what's happening. They're getting themselves back out there, and they're noticing that they keep getting hurt again.
Same patterns.
So they're putting themselves out there to sort of feel better, and maybe friends are encouraging them. And then they're realizing that, ouch, like they're doing this thing and it's not working. And then they're like, wow, I really need to sharpen my pencil in this area. If someone's very fresh out of a relationship, you're absolutely right. I think it truly depends on the person, as to whether they want to get back out there. But I would absolutely suggest slowing it down. And with the Manfunnel method, the opposite of linear dating is what I call the abundance model of dating. And in that model, you're exploring people, but not in a deep way where you're physically intimate. You're exploring them and saying, look, I want to I'm not really ready to jump into something. I'd love to get to know each other, and holding an exploratory phase of about 3 months before really getting wrapped up. And that's everybody has their own love story and goes about things their own way. So everybody has their own love story, but if you have come out of a relationship, I think it's just even more important to slow it down and observe people so you don't get hurt again. And that makes the breakup, the person you've lost, it makes everything seem so wrong when you're doing that and you're going back out there and then getting hurt again. It's just really awful.
Is there something about the exploratory phase that you find the most rewarding as a coach? Is there something that you can attribute to why you do what you do in the exploratory phase?
That's great. That's a really great question. Well, women come to me and they say, wow, I'm so glad I took it slow, because I would have normally slept with that person, and then it really just took me that extra date to realize he wasn't right, and I didn't end up getting into that situationship. Because oftentimes when we're physically intimate before we know the person, that's how we land in situationships. They can last forever. I had a 5-year one time.
Yeah. So it is being intimate with the person too soon that you find is the quickest ride to the situationship land, if that's not what you're looking for.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. But you have to know how to communicate through all the processes. So in the Manfunnel method, what we do is we learn how to communicate from every part, from moment one, from word one on the dating app, to each part of the commitment process. So everything just goes really smoothly, and that relationship takes off if it's meant to.
And would you say that, is there a particular breakup story that you have that you ever tell your clients about, the biggest thing you learned from your own breakups?
Yes. Well, I have many stories to share with you, but one of them that's related to what we've talked about is just that, where, I really wasn't in touch with my own value and what I brought to the table. So when we date from that position, you're just dating at a disadvantage. Okay. So not only did I not know my value on a deep level, so obviously our actions, external actions, match our internal beliefs. So you're demonstrating your value to the people you're dating at all times without realizing it. Okay. That's why that's why I like to give the women the external actions of how to show up, and we work it in backwards. That's one way we make the internal shifts, and we do the inner work too. So one of these relationships, it was a whirlwind relationship. And I just remember talking to my mom on the phone and was like, I don't even know why he would like me. I said something along those lines to my mom. And my mom was like, well, he does like you. Of course he likes you, right? But this kind of narrative it's just not going to get me anywhere. And then I wasn't treated very well in that relationship, but I stuck around for all of it because I was too afraid, and I thought he was like the best that I could have, and I put him on a pedestal. So all of these things are really problematic.
Messages being sent at all times.
Yeah. And so if that's happening to you, it's a really great sign for you to regroup and, start to nurture your inner self. And if you don't know how to do it, that is when working with a therapist and in addition to a coach could change the trajectory of your life forever. It certainly did for me.
Why does he like me? I mean, I don't know if every listener out there goes through this or if it's just a portion of us, but yeah, that absolutely is a question that is much bigger than the relationship itself, is why does he like me? Yeah.
Very sad looking back, and that stuck with me, this the feeling and the hurt and the breakup, because I also was filling in my own self-concept by having this person. The things I was putting him on the pedestal for were things I wanted for myself. But instead of building it in my own life, I grasped onto him for it, right? So when I lost him, I was losing this puffed up ego that I grew from grasping on to the person and what he had. Whereas now, obviously, many years later, I've built those things for myself. And I'm a whole person who's in a relationship with a whole person rather than,
Right.
a person that's fragmented and then having his fragments fill in my self concept, right?
So what's the biggest external list or the most important top 3 that women can implement in their lives so that they never have to ask the question of why is he dating me or why does he like me?
Well, first of all, from a divine standpoint, you are here, you're designed for love, period. So you're worthy of love and you're worthy of the best treatment just as you are now, regardless of anything, your age, your beliefs, your weight, regardless of any of that. And so I remember dating and I would have like my angel on the shoulder telling me I was lovable and worthy. And then I would have my devil on the shoulder, right? And we have these
Right.
voices. That devil voice, those negative voices, negative self-talk, which are also related to your limiting beliefs, which are also related to your glass ceiling that we talked about. Like, these are untrue, and you want to challenge them and always be asking, listening to how you talk to yourself and challenging yourself. Are these true? Because what I found, which was so beautiful, is that when I found my husband, he loved me in all the ways that I like this little voice, which might not have been as strong as the devil voice. This other voice was always there telling me I was worthy and lovable for all these things. The right person is going to see all of that. But you also have to be shining your light and glowing. And we do that by listening to the good voice, nurturing it, feeding it, and living in that way, expecting that the right person is eventually going to see all of that, and they will.
You have to have a good PR agent for yourself. You cannot let the
That's a cute way to look at it.
Yeah. Not the negative rag magazine columnist giving you other people the synopsis of you.
You have to be so careful because the narrative out there about the limitations and negativities of dating are really strong and they can get you down, but they don't have to be your story. You can rise above that. You still can find love. There's so many people that want what you want. They want that forever love. They want that family. And so you want to surround yourself with stories of love and luck in love, and happy love, because they're out there. But your own ego or confirmation bias, whatever those internal beliefs that you do have, our human brains naturally strive to prove ourselves right. So they're scanning the information out there. And so if you're thinking love is impossible, for example, just throwing out a limiting belief, you are going to naturally collect information that proves you right. So to counteract that, you have to actually actively seek out the positive stories that are going to guide you to the narrative that will serve you. And so that is one of the first things I would suggest doing continuously, is proactively allowing and finding and seeking out great stories of love to feed your heart and your mind and your brain, because automatically your brain's going to be searching for the other information.
The negative. And what are things that people should turn their brains off to? What are the negative or the toxic traits that you should steer? I mean, I think we all know the obvious ones, but from a dating coach perspective, that the ones that we might not see coming, that you think, oh, they're interested, but no, that actually means something else. Is there something to help avoid pitfalls?
Yes. Again, that exploratory phase and taking your time is so very important, because, that angel voice is telling us how lovable we are. And then here comes a person who you're dating and they start to tell you you're the most beautiful person they've ever seen. You're so amazing. And you're sort of like, oh, yes, finally, someone sees all of that. But in this day and age, you just have to be so careful, because there are so many people that are love bombing and pulling you into a relationship prematurely. So what's so important about holding that exploratory phase and observing them? Even if you're physically intimate in that time, you're still managing your expectations to where this person is in observation mode, and you're not going to allow yourself into a deep entanglement of a toxic relationship. So you do need to be wary of people who are coming on too strong. So if somebody's a little over the top in their presentation, that's a really good sign to take a step back and observe.
Right.
Because most often than not, the toxic ones are not going to wait for you to take your time. So it's a really great way to let them peel away while you're on your search for like a wholesome, loving person who wants to get to know you over time.
Right. And it's a blessing. It's a blessing for them to stop calling. It's a blessing for them to stop texting, and recognizing, connecting the feeling of not being rejected, but connecting the feeling of, okay, it's going to hurt that someone doesn't like me, but it shouldn't hurt, and working on that connection of conditioning positive feelings and negative feelings to the right kinds of behaviors, that it might intuitively
Yes, you're
seem
absolutely right.
that they're leaving a situation is a bad thing, but it should hopefully, through work with people like Megan and the Manfunnel method and therapy, that we can hopefully recondition this idea that just because something is parting ways, whether that it never even led to a relationship, it's truly a blessing, and hopefully we can connect and feel that warmth, and hopefully, like you're saying, if you shouldn't have to hopefully need the love bombing. It'll always be nice to be told something nice about you, but if you're giving yourself that own self-talk, then you don't need it as much from other sources.
You're so spot on there. And that goes back to the cracks we have in our self-concept. The love bombers know they can feel it in you, and they start to test how much you're just so excited to be hearing these things, that they're getting away with it. And when you have those cracks in your foundation and you really need to hear that so badly, is when you can truly become more of a victim. So that's such a great way to share that. Thank you.
And then what would you say the top 3 things to look for in a relationship? How you know the exploratory phase should move on into a relationship?
Well, it's really about how you feel. So the ways to guide yourself, rather than searching for external parameters in your relationship, why don't we shift that and go with the top 3 ways that you want to feel in your relationship? So if everyone can identify that now, and that way when you're dating, you can check in and you can say, do I feel cherished, safe, and cared for? Okay, or whatever your top feelings are. So that is exactly how I want you to stay in tune with, hey, am I on the right path here in my dating process?
Cherished, safe, and cared for. Are there 3 that you like the most, of knowing that you are in a compatible, healthy, safe relationship?
I think that safety is really a big one. Okay. And I don't mean like safety from, a killer, serial killer or something. Obviously that's important too. I just mean like when you find the right person, you're not going to be so incredibly stressed out. I have people in my life, clients and people who come to me, and they're just so incredibly uncomfortable. And of course, as we make our way towards intimacy, there is a level of discomfort, and dating, we do need to get out of our comfort zones. Okay. But when you find the right person, there is a feeling inside that's just a little different than when we're grasping on to the wrong person. So you're going to feel that serenity inside of your body. And part of what we do in the beginning of laying our foundation here at the Manfunnel is truly helping you build that mind and body integration. So your intuition is on another level. So when the right person is around you, your body is giving you the signals that you're on the right track. And you're also able to sense through your body's signals when you're not.
So there should be a calmness perhaps, or not an urgency where you don't have to change your plans. You can still hang out with your girlfriends. That trusting that person's going to meet you halfway, and you don't need to, like you said, chase or feel the urge to grasp on.
There's a calmness, there's serenity, there's a safety that comes. One of my clients said it best when she said, "Oh my gosh, now I get it. The other ones were just also difficult. And when he came along, everything just clicked. and worked so easily. And that was how she differentiated it.
And then is there anything else that you think leads to really beautiful lifelong love, if that's someone's goal in life?
Well, it's very important to grow and constantly be working on your contribution. So when we're in a long-term relationship, marriage or new relationship, relationships are a mirror, and you're constantly going to be, triggers are going to happen as you get closer to intimacy and even as you move along in your relationship. But there's always a contribution. If something's like not working out in that relationship and there's fights and stuff, you're always contributing in some way. Okay. That's not to victim blame someone who's in an abusive relationship, however, but there are signs and signals, right? For like in my relationship that I shared with you that I wasn't being treated well, I also stayed for more. And so it's so important to look within. Anytime you're pointing fingers at others, there's still a finger or two pointing at you. And it's so important to reflect on that. So both partners need to do that and have the ability to do that and to come together and share kind of their responsibilities in order to kind of get to that next level of intimacy and move on to another level of relationship health.
Self-inventory for long-term success.
Now, actually, Gen Z is very big into something called stack dating. That's really
What's
interesting.
stack dating? STACK?
Yeah, they're
dating?
stacking. They're doing it. They're like threading it into their daily lives. Like they're not getting all dressed up on dates. They're just after class. Maybe they'll have a quick coffee, and it's a known thing where you're just having quick, very casual dates, and they're just threading them into their daily lives. That's like the big trend right now.
Interesting term, stack dating.
But I've been teaching it for years. It's basically the Manfunnel.
Wow. So yeah, not getting dressed up on a date where you're putting your best foot forward. They're seeing an everyday off the cuff version of what it would be like to actually date you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going on a date that day. So you're going to put yourself together a little more, but I guess you're not like spending so much time on your hair and makeup and then like getting dressed up for this big date that you're looking forward to. And then it's a letdown, right? Rather, you might have two coffee dates, maybe one after class and maybe one in the early evening, or maybe you're having a glass of wine in the early evening. So you're just like threading them in and you're not making them all such a big deal.
Right. The emphasis is more so on just your day in general, and they're just a part of it. Right.
Yeah. So that's what they're
smart.
doing.
I also think it's also a logistical thing of, like you said, there's not as much emphasis, there's not as much letdown. And also it's just easier. It's more sustainable to date multiple people throughout your week and still be able to see your friends or hang out with family members or have alone time. It's more integrated in your life. So it's more sustainable to date multiple people.
Yeah. And they're being very conscious, like, about their menstrual cycles, like when they're going to stack their dates, times when they know that they want to interact with other people, because according to Gen Z, it's like, it's so exhausting to interact with other people because they don't have the skills. And when you have to really think about it and you're uncomfortable, it drains your energy so much.
And just to wrap things up, what's a just quirky, weird, where's the weirdest place you got broken up with or broke up with someone in New York City?
One of the best stories was I was living with a boyfriend and he was doing a project in another city, but I still had my apartment uptown, but like all my stuff was in his apartment, but he literally would not break up with me. Okay. So he wouldn't come home and he would not pull the trigger on breaking up with me, but he also wouldn't talk to me or see me or kick me out.
So you're just like, great, I'll live here for free.
No, I was like, it was just very confusing, right? He just wouldn't pull the trigger. One day my boss came with me to his place and we gathered up all my stuff and I just moved out and I'm like, I'm going to assume that we're broken up because we're not acting like we're in a relationship, but he was like gaslighting me that we still were. That was my most deranged breakup. It's still very, very confusing. I'm almost certain he was in a relationship in that other city as well, at least one. But it was just, it's still a head scratcher, Holland.
I guess I could just continue leaving my things here and going back and forth between my apartment and your apartment. Oh,
I
gosh.
could have. Yeah, I totally could have.
Our next segment is called the lightning round. These are going to be one word or one sentence answers, whatever comes to mind first. When was your first breakup?
Oh gosh, I'm a person who had many relationships. Like when I was in my youth, I used to joke that I had my most serious relationships in grade school. So I had my boyfriend in Montessori for a couple years. First grade was pretty dry. Second grade, so very early on,
4 or 5.
I would say.
Yeah.
Then I hit it. Then
Montessori
after
school.
that, like high school was a real dry spell.
Well, so Montessori school was pretty socially active. And when was your first crush?
Very early on, 6 years old at the ice skating rink. I used to go skating with my dad, and I was obsessed with this guy. And my dad would be like, "There's Kenny, Megan, let's go say hi." And I would turn like bright red.
Kenny at the ice skating
rink. He was
rink.
like 18, I was about 6. So yeah,
it would have worked out.
Very healthy start to relationships, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. What would you say your model relationship is? It could be your parents or someone that you know, or it could be your own relationship.
Gosh, I have some friends of mine who have their parents have wonderful relationships. And my father has a wonderful relationship. But again, I think it's like you've got to actively seek those out. And you can even reach out and call these people and have an interview with them to learn more about their relationships. But also my grandma and grandpa had a wonderful relationship. So, I didn't have all good models of relationships in my life, but I had some really good ones too.
I love your friends' parents. I didn't think about that one. Those are great ones. And then what is your breakup movie?
I don't have a breakup movie. I remember my breakups, I would always put on the Animal Planet. For me, that is like the most
soothing. Works. That counts.
That's the most soothing thing to watch. Or then like good old Sex in the City.
Which is kind of like Animal Planet as well. Yeah. Very, very close analogies.
They all had pretty strong Manfunnels, right?
They very much did. It was definitely a jungle. Let's put it that way. Absolutely. And then what is your go-to breakup food?
Pasta, of course. Pasta and tacos. Pasta
New York
and tacos
pasta.
Galore. Yes,
tacos. Pasta. And what is the first thing you do after a breakup? What did you do? Or you find that your clients
hug any animal in sight, anyone's dog on the street. Back then, I didn't have my own animals, but as you saw, I would watch Animal Planet. But I think pets are just such an incredible way to share a love as a human. We're so lucky to have them.
We are. We don't deserve them. We're so lucky to have them. Absolutely.
Yes.
We have, I think we have 9 office dogs running around between a couple of floors here at the
that is
office.
The best.
So I really value that this is a workplace where we can bring a lot of pets.
It's so important. I love that.
It absolutely is. I very much agree. And then what is the number one red flag in a relationship or potential relationship?
The number one thing to look out for, and this goes back to when we were talking about toxic men, if you're expressing a desire or a boundary and they're pushing up against that, you really want to take note of that. So if somebody lacks empathy toward your desire or your boundary, you want to really keep your eye out of that person. Toxic people will challenge your boundaries. They'll push on them and they want to see what they can get away with. And if they can't get away with it, don't be surprised if they back away. And again, that's you've dodged a bullet.
You've dodged a bullet. And what is your number one green flag in a relationship or potential relationship?
Probably the opposite of that. Someone who hears you, feels like they share your visions and your desires, and you can share and state your boundary once, and they're going to take that to heart and respect it.
And then what is one fun quirk that your partner loves about you that you have?
I am very, very quirky. Gosh, I don't know. We make each other laugh all the time. We're very silly at home. Sandy and Zeus are my dogs. I sing them lots of songs, so I might sing them a song to get them out of bed. We have a different song before we're about to go
Oh,
out. So, does he love these? I don't know. You'd have to ask Josh if these are extremely annoying or endearing. I'm not quite sure.
he might miss them if they weren't around. So I'll
Thank
take that
you.
as a compliment. Yeah. And then how did you know that your husband was the one?
Well, this is funny because he said to his brother-in-law that he really liked me, and then the brother-in-law was like, "Well, does she feel the same way about you?" And Josh said, "She says I'm consistent." Okay. Now, why this is important is because I really was observing the candidates. Okay. My background is in corporate recruitment. So I bring a little bit of that and
Man
sales
funneling.
into the man funnel process. The man funnel is a metaphor for like an actual sales funnel. Okay. This is why I get you to your partner so quickly. But I was observing him over time. And when Josh was trying to figure out how I felt, I had said, you're consistent. So we have a chuckle about that. But at some point I just knew, again, I felt that safety. I felt I could be myself. We would crack up a lot. We just really got each other, like someone who you just feel like you're cut from the same cloth. And so when Josh
Right.
told me this wasn't a planned proposal, we hadn't seen each other in a while, a couple of weeks. And we were so excited to see each other that night. And when he turned to me and said, "I want to marry you," and I was just like, "I want to marry you too." It wasn't like a proposal. He didn't have like a ring. There wasn't a plan. He just, when he said he knew, he felt it. He couldn't hold it from me. And we just knew.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate your time. Megan and the Man Funnel Method, guys, check her out on Google, Instagram. If you find yourself stuck in a dating rut, I think absolutely implementing a dating coach. It wasn't on my radar. So I am now this will be in my wheelhouse of having a dating coach.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
So helpful. It really, truly is.
And our last segment is going to be a words of wisdom. And this is the elevator pitch, I call it. What is a sentence that or a message for people looking to move through an uncoupling coming from a dating coach?
I just truly want you to know that there's always another chance at love. This love is not your last chance, and your greatest love is likely ahead of you. So release something that's not working and try to allow yourself to flow with that stream of water, right? Into whatever that universe is trying to show you is your journey.
I love that. This has been another insightful episode of UnCoupling. Please subscribe to wherever you get your podcast, and don't forget to sign up for our exclusive Patreon channel, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you so much.
UnCoupling Podcast is produced by Stampede Ventures, Jason R. Ellis, and Holland Roden.